Isabella Quinn's wedding night began with a gun on the table and a contract soaked in her family's desperation. The man across from her, Roman DeLuca, New York's most feared mafia boss, didn't ask if she wanted this. He told her to take off the dress, told her she meant nothing, told her this was business, and business didn't bleed. But Isabella didn't cry. She didn't beg. She looked into the eyes of the man who bought her like property and made a promise to herself. She would survive him, even if it killed her, even if she fell in love trying. If you want to see how this dangerous love story unfolds, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The wedding dress cost more than Isabella Quinn's childhood home. White silk, hand-stitched lace, a designer label she couldn't pronounce. It hung in her cramped bedroom like a ghost, beautiful and suffocating, while she sat on the edge of her mattress staring at the eviction notice crumpled on the floor. 3 days until the wedding. 3 days until she stopped being Isabella Quinn and became Mrs. Roman DeLuca, property of a man she'd never spoken to, bound to a life she never chose, all because her father couldn't keep his hands off a poker table and her brother couldn't outrun the wrong crowd. Is he? She looked up. Her younger brother Marcus stood in the doorway, 17 years old and trying hard not to look terrified. His left arm was in a sling. The bruises on his face had faded from purple to yellow, but the fear in his eyes hadn't gone anywhere. "You okay?" he asked. Isabella smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine." "You're lying." "Yeah." She stood, smoothing down the jeans she'd worn for 2 days straight. "But I'm good at it." Marcus stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The apartment was small enough that closing doors didn't buy much privacy, but it was the gesture that mattered. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." "We could run, disappear, change our names, I don't know, go to—" "They'd find us." Isabella picked up the eviction notice, folded it neatly, and set it on the dresser next to the wedding invitation. Cream cardstock, embossed lettering. "Mr. Roman DeLuca requests the honor of your presence." Men like Roman DeLuca don't lose things they've paid for. You're not a thing. Tell that to Dad's creditors. Marcus flinched. Their father had disappeared 2 weeks ago, right after signing the contract that sold Isabella's future to cover his debts. She didn't know where he'd gone, didn't care. Some part of her hoped he felt guilty. Most of her knew better. "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered. Isabella crossed the room and pulled him into a hug, careful of his injured arm. "This isn't your fault. If I hadn't borrowed money from those guys, you were trying to help Mom." "I know." She pulled back, gripping his shoulders. "And now I'm helping you. That's what family does." "By marrying a murderer?" "By doing what needs to be done." She said it with more confidence than she felt. The DeLuca estate sat on the edge of the city like a fortress. Isabella had seen it once before, 3 weeks ago, when 2 men in expensive suits showed up at her apartment and drove her to a meeting she couldn't refuse. They'd taken her through iron gates, past armed security, and into a marble-floored mansion that smelled like old money and new threats. Roman DeLuca had been waiting in his study. She remembered walking in and feeling the air change. Heavier, colder, like stepping into a room where something dangerous lived. He'd been standing by the window, backlit by afternoon sun, and when he turned to look at her, Isabella understood why people whispered his name like a curse. Roman DeLuca wasn't handsome in any soft way. He was sharp edges and controlled violence, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair cut close and eyes the color of winter storms. He wore a suit like armor, and when he looked at her, Isabella felt seen in a way that made her skin prickle. "Sit," he'd said, not a request. She sat. He'd placed a folder on the desk between them, thick, official. "Your father owes my organization $800,000, plus interest. The men your brother borrowed from work for me. He owes another $60,000. Isabella's stomach twisted. "I don't have that kind of money." "I know." Roman opened the folder, turning it so she could see the contract inside. "Which is why we're here." She'd read it. Every word, every clause, every line that signed away her freedom. In exchange for the complete forgiveness of all outstanding debts owed by Michael Quinn and Marcus Quinn, Isabella Quinn agrees to enter into marriage with Roman DeLuca, Said marriage will remain legally binding for a minimum period of 3 years. Isabella Quinn will reside in the DeLuca estate, fulfill all public obligations as Mrs. Roman DeLuca, and maintain absolute discretion regarding family business. "You're buying a wife," she'd said. "I'm acquiring an asset." Roman's expression didn't change. "You're young, educated, and clean, no criminal record, no scandals. You'll present well at public events, and your presence will help legitimize certain business interests." Business interests. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. Isabella had looked at the contract again, her hands shaking. "And if I say no?" "Your brother's debts will be collected, violently. Your mother will lose her home, and your father, wherever he is, won't live long enough to regret running." Roman leaned back in his chair, perfectly calm. "Or you can sign the contract, move into the East Wing, and learn to smile at charity galas. Your choice." It wasn't a choice. It was a trap dressed up in legal language. She'd signed. Now, 3 days before the wedding, Isabella stood in front of her bathroom mirror and tried to recognize herself. The woman staring back looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, hair that needed washing, a body running on coffee and anxiety. She'd lost weight, couldn't sleep, spent most nights lying awake wondering what kind of man bought a wife and called it business. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Car will arrive tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bring only personal items. Everything else will be provided. No name, no signature, just instructions." Isabella set the phone down and turned on the shower. She stood under the hot water until it ran cold, trying to wash away the feeling that she was making the biggest mistake of her life. The next morning, the car arrived exactly at 10. Black, expensive, tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that said "don't look too close." The driver was a man in his 50s with gray hair and the posture of someone who'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. He introduced himself as Vincent, opened the trunk, and loaded Isabella's 2 suitcases without comment. Her mother stood on the sidewalk crying quietly. Marcus looked like he wanted to punch something. "I'll call," Isabella promised, hugging them both. "Every day. I promise." "If he hurts you," Marcus started. "He won't." She didn't know if that was true, but saying it out loud made her feel braver. The drive into the city felt longer than it was. Isabella watched the neighborhoods change through the window. Crumbling apartments gave way to brownstones. Brownstones gave way to high-rises. And then they were pulling up to the DeLuca building, a glass tower in midtown Manhattan that probably cost more than entire city blocks. Vincent led her through a private entrance, into a private elevator, and up to the penthouse. The doors opened onto a space that didn't feel real. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Marble floors. Modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was white, black, or gray. Cold, clean, and aggressively impersonal. "Miss Quinn." Isabella turned. A woman in her 40s stood near the entrance, perfectly put together in a navy dress and heels. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, and her expression was the kind of neutral that came from years of practice. "I'm Elena," the woman said. "I manage the household. If you need anything, you'll come to me." "Thank you." Elena's eyes swept over Isabella's jeans and sweater, and something flickered in her expression. Pity, maybe, or judgment. "Your rooms are this way." The East Wing was bigger than Isabella's entire apartment. Bedroom, sitting room. Walk-in closet already filled with clothes she'd never picked out. Bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. Everything expensive, everything perfect, everything that reminded her she didn't belong here. "Mr. DeLuca will return this evening," Elena said. "Dinner is at 7. Formal dress." "Does he always eat formally?" "Mr. DeLuca has standards." It wasn't an answer, but Isabella didn't push. After Elena left, she sat on the edge of the bed, a king-sized thing with sheets that probably cost more than her mother's rent, and tried not to cry. She'd known this would be hard. She hadn't known it would feel like suffocating. Roman DeLuca came home at 6:30. Isabella heard him before she saw him, the sound of the elevator, low voices in the hallway, doors closing. She'd been sitting in the main living area for 20 minutes, wearing one of the dresses from the closet, black, simple, boring, trying to look like she hadn't been panicking for the past hour. When he walked in, the air changed. He was still in his suit, tie loosened, looking exactly like what he was, a man who controlled things. People. Money. Lives. He saw her immediately, and for a second something crossed his face. Surprise, maybe. Like he'd forgotten she'd be here. Isabella. Mr. DeLuca. Roman. He set his briefcase down, shrugged out of his jacket. We're getting married. Use my name. She nodded, didn't trust her voice. He poured himself a drink, whiskey, neat, and gestured toward the dining room. We'll eat. Dinner was tense and silent. Elena had prepared something that looked like it belonged in a magazine, perfectly plated, expertly seasoned. Isabella barely tasted it. She was too aware of Roman sitting across from her, watching her with those cold, unreadable eyes. You settled in? He asked. Yes. Good. He cut into his food with surgical precision. The wedding is in 2 days. There will be approximately 200 guests, mostly business associates. You'll smile, greet them appropriately, and stay by my side. Okay. After the ceremony, we'll host a reception here. It will run late. You'll need stamina. Isabella set down her fork. Can I ask you something? Roman looked up. Depends on the question. Why me? He didn't answer right away, just studied her like she was a problem he was trying to solve. You signed a contract. The reasons are in the terms. That's not what I mean. She leaned forward slightly. You're rich. You're powerful. You could have anyone. So why buy a wife you don't want? Roman's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, something dark. Who said I don't want you? The words hit her like cold water. You said this was business, Isabella managed. It is. Then, you're useful, Isabella. You'll help me maintain appearances, legitimize certain operations, and provide stability where I need it. What I want is irrelevant. He finished his drink, stood. Finish your dinner. I have work to do. He left, and Isabella sat alone in a dining room big enough to hold her entire family, staring at food she couldn't eat, wondering what the hell she'd gotten herself into. The night before the wedding, Isabella couldn't sleep. She'd tried. Lay in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the city 40 floors below. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the contract, the signatures, the life she'd agreed to. At 2 a.m, she gave up and went looking for the kitchen. The penthouse was massive, and she got lost twice before finding it. When she finally did, she wasn't alone. Roman was sitting at the island, still dressed, a laptop open in front of him, and another glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked up when she walked in. Can't sleep? No? Isabella hesitated. Sorry, I didn't know you'd be up. I don't sleep much. She moved to the fridge, found a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Nervous? Roman asked. Yes? Don't be. It's just a performance. For you, maybe. Isabella twisted the cap off the water bottle. For me, it's my life. Roman's jaw tightened. He closed the laptop, set down the glass. You think I don't know that? I think you don't care. You're wrong. The words were quiet. Almost too quiet. Isabella looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time saw something other than cold control. There was something underneath, something buried deep. Then why does it feel like I'm being punished? She asked. Roman stood, walked around the island until he was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. Because you are. Just not by me. What does that mean? He didn't answer, just looked at her with those winter storm eyes, and Isabella felt her breath catch. Get some sleep, he said finally. Tomorrow's going to be long. He left, and Isabella stood alone in the kitchen, heart pounding, wondering what the hell just happened. The wedding was a blur. Cameras, flowers, 200 strangers watching her promise forever to a man who'd bought her like furniture. Isabella wore the expensive dress, smiled the expected smile, and said the words she didn't mean. Roman slid a ring onto her finger, platinum, diamond, cold. She did the same for him. And when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Roman leaned in and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that lasted exactly 3 seconds and felt like ice. The crowd applauded. Isabella wanted to scream. The reception was worse. Hours of shaking hands, making small talk, pretending she wasn't drowning. Roman stayed by her side the entire time, his hand on her lower back, introducing her as my wife, like the words didn't taste like poison. People congratulated them, called them a beautiful couple, said they looked perfect together. Isabella smiled until her face hurt. It was past midnight when the last guest finally left. The penthouse felt enormous and empty. Elena had disappeared. The catering staff had cleaned everything and gone. It was just Isabella and Roman standing in the wreckage of their wedding reception, surrounded by flowers and champagne glasses and the lie they'd just sold to 200 people. Roman loosened his tie, poured himself another drink. Isabella kicked off her heels. Her feet were killing her. "You did well," Roman said. "Thanks. I mean it. You were convincing." "So were you." He looked at her over the rim of his glass. "Was I?" Isabella didn't know how to answer that. She was exhausted, emotionally wrung out, standing in a wedding dress that cost more than a car, married to a stranger, trying not to fall apart. "I'm going to bed," she said. "Isabella." She stopped, turned. Roman set down his glass, walked toward her with that controlled precision that made her heart race. When he stopped, he was close. Too close. She could see the gray flecks in his eyes, the fine lines at the corners, the way his jaw worked like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. "Take off the dress," he said quietly. Isabella's stomach dropped. "What?" "The dress. Take it off." "Roman, this marriage is business." His voice was flat, cold. "You mean nothing to me. Don't forget that." The words hit her like a slap. Isabella stared at him, waiting for the punchline, waiting for him to smile or soften or show any sign that he didn't mean it. But his expression didn't change. He just looked at her with those empty eyes, and Isabella realized he was serious. "You're an asshole," she whispered. "I know." She turned and walked away, still in the dress, heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She made it to the east wing, into her bedroom, before the tears came. And in the massive penthouse that was supposed to be her home, Isabella Quinn, now Isabella DeLuca, cried herself to sleep on her wedding night alone. The cunt. The first week was hell. Roman left early every morning and came home late. When he was there, he was polite, distant, and completely unreadable. They ate dinner together most nights because Elena insisted it looked better, but the meals were silent and strained. Isabella tried to find a rhythm, tried to figure out what her life was supposed to look like now. She had no job, no responsibilities, nothing to do except exist in this gilded cage and pretend everything was fine. She called her mother every day, texted Marcus, lied about how happy she was. On the 8th day, she found the library. It was tucked away in the south wing, behind a door she'd thought was a closet. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs, a window overlooking the city. It was the first room in the penthouse that felt like it had a soul. Isabella spent the afternoon reading. She was halfway through a novel when Roman came home early and found her curled up in one of the chairs, still in her pajamas, hair a mess. He stopped in the doorway. "I didn't know you'd found this room." Isabella looked up. "Is it okay that I'm here?" "It's your home." "Doesn't feel like it." Roman stepped inside, hands in his pockets. He looked tired, more tired than usual. There was something off about him. Tension in his shoulders, a tightness around his eyes. "Rough day?" Isabella asked. "You could say that." "Want to talk about it?" "No." "Okay." She went back to her book. Roman didn't leave. He stood there for a long moment, then moved to the window, looking out at the city like he was searching for something he'd lost. "You read a lot?" he asked. "When I can." "What kind of books?" "Anything. Fiction, mostly. Stuff that doesn't feel like real life." "Escape." "Yeah." He nodded slowly. "I get that." Isabella closed the book, studying him. In the late afternoon light, Roman looked different, softer, maybe, or just human. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends." "Why did you really marry me?" Roman turned from the window. His expression was unreadable. "I told you. Business, I know, but there's more to it." She stood, crossing her arms. "You don't need a wife for appearances. Men like you do what they want and don't apologize. So what's the real reason?" For a long moment, Roman didn't answer. He just looked at her with those storm gray eyes, and Isabella thought he might actually tell her the truth. Instead, he said, "Don't dig into things you can't handle. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." He left, and Isabella stood alone in the library, more confused than ever. 2 weeks into the marriage, Isabella started noticing things, small things, strange things. White roses appeared in her room. Every few days. No note, no explanation, just a perfect arrangement on her nightstand. Roman watched her, more than he needed to. She'd catch him staring during dinner, his expression unreadable. Or she'd turn around in the library and find him standing in the doorway, like he'd been there for a while. He noticed things too. When she skipped breakfast, when she stayed up too late reading, when she looked tired or stressed or sad. One night, after a particularly brutal day where Isabella had spent 6 hours on the phone with her mother who was spiraling about money again, she came down to dinner looking like she'd been crying. Roman saw it immediately. "What happened?" he asked. "Nothing." "Don't lie." Isabella set down her fork. "My mom's freaking out about rent. Even though I told her it's covered, she doesn't believe me." "Why not?" "Because good things don't happen to people like us." She rubbed her eyes. "She thinks there's a catch, that you're going to take it back or ask for something worse." Roman's jaw tightened. "I'll have Vincent handle it. She'll receive written confirmation tomorrow." "You don't have to. I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it for you." The words hung in the air. Isabella looked at him, searching his face for some hint of emotion. "Why?" "Because you're my wife, and your family's stability is part of the arrangement." It was a business answer. But the way he said it, quiet, almost gentle, didn't match. That night, Isabella lay awake thinking about white roses and the way Roman's expression had softened when he said, "I'm doing it for you." 3 weeks in, they had their first real fight. Roman came home at 2 in the morning, blood on his shirt, a cut above his eyebrow, moving like his ribs hurt. Isabella had been reading in the living room, unable to sleep. She heard him come in, saw the blood, and stood up so fast she knocked over her wine glass. "What the hell happened?" she demanded. Roman didn't look at her. "Nothing." "That's not nothing. You're bleeding." "I'm fine." "Like hell you are." Isabella crossed the room, reaching for him. "Let me see." Roman caught her wrist, hard. Not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to stop her. "Don't. You need a doctor." "I don't need anything." He let go of her, moved toward the hallway. "Go to bed, Isabella." "No." He stopped, turned. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Isabella's hands were shaking, but she held her ground. "You don't get to come home covered in blood and pretend everything's fine. I'm not an idiot. I know what you do. I know what kind of man you are. But if you're going to bleed all over the marble, the least you can do is let me help." Roman stared at her. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "You don't know anything about what kind of man I am." "Then tell me." "No." "Why?" "Because some things are better left buried." He started walking again. "Go to bed." "Roman, go to bed." The command was final, cold, the kind of tone that made grown men back down. Isabella didn't move. Roman disappeared into his wing of the penthouse, and Isabella stood there, heart pounding, wondering when she'd become brave enough to fight with a mafia boss. The next morning, Roman was gone before she woke up, but there was a note on the kitchen counter written in sharp, precise handwriting. "Your mother's lease has been renewed, paid in full. 3 years." Isabella stared at the note, something tight and complicated twisting in her chest. Later that day, she went looking for answers. The penthouse had rooms she'd never been in, entire wings she'd avoided because they felt too much like trespassing. But if Roman was going to shut her out, then she'd find her own way in. She found his study by accident. It was locked, but the door was old, and Isabella had grown up in a building where nothing worked right. She'd learned how to pop a lock at 15. Inside, the study was exactly what she expected. Dark wood, expensive furniture, a desk covered in files and paperwork she probably shouldn't look at. She looked anyway. Most of it was business, contracts, ledgers, names she didn't recognize. But tucked in the bottom drawer under a stack of folders, she found something that didn't belong. A photograph. A woman. Beautiful. Dark hair, bright eyes, laughing at something outside the frame. On the back, written in faded ink, "Forever, Roman." Isabella stared at it, her stomach sinking. She knew that look. The look of someone who'd loved and lost. There was more. Letters, old ones. The paper yellowed, the handwriting looping and elegant. She read one. Then another. They were love letters. Written to Roman. Signed, "Yours always, Caroline." The last letter was different, shorter, shakier. "I'm sorry I couldn't be stronger. I'm sorry I couldn't stay. I loved you. I hope someday you'll forgive me." No date, no explanation, just grief on paper. Isabella put everything back exactly where she'd found it, left the study, and went to her room. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, trying to piece together the puzzle. Roman DeLuca had loved someone, and she was gone. And whatever had happened, whatever had broken him, it was bad enough that he'd buried himself in ice and control and called it survival. For the first time, Isabella understood. The cruelty wasn't indifference, it was protection. Moments. That night, Roman came home at a normal hour. He found Isabella in the kitchen, making tea, and paused in the doorway like he wasn't sure he was allowed to enter. "Hey," she said. "Hey. You want some?" She held up the kettle. Roman hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." They sat at the island together, drinking tea in silence. It should have been awkward, but it wasn't. It was just quiet. Comfortable, almost. "Thank you," Isabella said finally. "For my mom's lease. You already thanked me." "No, I didn't. I read the note and cried for 20 minutes. A ghost of a smile crossed Roman's face. "You're welcome." More silence. Then Isabella said, "I'm sorry about last night. I shouldn't have pushed." Roman looked at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You were right to. I was an asshole." "You're always an asshole." "Fair," Isabella smiled. A real one this time. And for just a second, Roman smiled back, and the ice around him cracked just enough that she could see the man underneath. It scared her, because underneath the Mafia boss, the control, the danger, there was someone worth knowing, and Isabella was starting to think she wanted to. The shift happened slowly, like ice melting in spring. Over the next few weeks, the distance between them became something else. Not warmth, exactly. Not trust. But something closer to understanding. Roman stopped disappearing into his wing the moment he came home. Isabella stopped pretending she didn't notice when he was hurt or tired or carrying the weight of whatever darkness he dealt with outside these walls. They started having breakfast together. It wasn't planned. Isabella had been up early one morning, unable to sleep, and wandered into the kitchen to find Roman already there, coffee in hand, reading something on his tablet that made his jaw tight. "Morning," she'd said, surprised. He'd looked up, equally surprised to see her. "Morning. You eat breakfast?" "Sometimes." "Want company?" Roman had hesitated, then gestured to the chair across from him. "Sure. That was 4 weeks ago." Now it was routine. Every morning, 7 o'clock, they sat across from each other and ate in comfortable silence. Sometimes they talked. Mostly they didn't. But it was something. A rhythm. A small piece of normal in a life that was anything but. Isabella learned things about him in those quiet mornings. He took his coffee black. Hated eggs. Read the news obsessively, like he was searching for threats in the headlines. He was left-handed. Had a scar on his knuckles from something he wouldn't talk about. When he was stressed, he rubbed his thumb against his wedding ring without realizing it. She wondered if he'd done that with Caroline's ring, too. The thought came unbidden, and Isabella pushed it away. She hadn't mentioned the photograph, hadn't brought up the letters. Some doors were meant to stay closed, and that one had warning signs all over it. But knowing about Caroline changed things, made Roman's coldness make sense. He wasn't heartless. He was grieving. And grief, Isabella knew, had a way of turning people into strangers even to themselves. One morning, Roman surprised her. "I have a charity gala Friday," he said, not looking up from his tablet. "You'll need to come." Isabella paused, coffee cup halfway to her lips. "Okay." "It's formal. Elena will handle your dress." "Got it." "And Isabella?" She looked at him. Roman's eyes met hers, and something in them made her chest tighten. These events can be, difficult. People will ask invasive questions, make assumptions. You don't have to answer anything you're not comfortable with. It was the closest thing to concern she'd heard from him. "I'll be fine," she said. "I know you will." He went back to his tablet, but there was something different in the set of his shoulders, less rigid. "But if anyone makes you uncomfortable, tell me. What'll you do? Break their kneecaps?" Roman's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "Something like that." Isabella laughed, and the sound felt foreign in the penthouse. Light, real. When was the last time she'd laughed? Roman looked at her again, and this time his expression was softer, unguarded. For just a second, she saw past the armor to the man underneath, and her breath caught. Then his phone rang, and the moment shattered. He answered it, his voice dropping into that cold, controlled tone he used for business. Isabella finished her coffee and left him to it, but as she walked away, she could feel his eyes on her back. The gala was worse than she'd imagined. The venue was a museum in Midtown, all marble columns and priceless art, filled with people who wore their wealth like weapons. Isabella had been to nice events before, her college graduation, a few work parties, but nothing like this. This was old money and new power, the kind of crowd where every handshake was a negotiation and every smile hid a knife. Elena had picked out a dress that probably cost more than Isabella's student loans. Emerald green silk that hugged her body and made her feel exposed. She'd argued for something simpler, but Elena had been firm. "You're Mrs. DeLuca now," Elena had said. "You represent him. Act like it." So Isabella wore the dress, the heels that hurt, the jewelry that felt like chains, and walked into the museum on Roman's arm like she belonged there. She didn't. Roman introduced her to people whose names she immediately forgot. Politicians, businessmen, a judge, a woman who ran half the real estate in Manhattan. They all smiled, all said the right things, all looked at her like they were trying to figure out what Roman DeLuca was doing with a girl from Queens who couldn't hide where she came from no matter how expensive the dress. "You're doing great," Roman murmured during a lull in conversation. "I feel like an imposter." "You're not. Easy for you to say. You were born into this." Roman's expression darkened. "I wasn't born into anything. I built this. There's a difference." Before Isabella could respond, a man approached, tall, silver-haired, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than a car. He had the kind of face that looked friendly until you looked closer and saw the calculation in his eyes. "Roman," the man said warmly, extending a hand. "Good to see you." Roman shook it, his grip firm. "Senator, and this must be the lovely bride I've heard so much about." The senator turned to Isabella, his smile widening. "Mrs. DeLuca, congratulations on your recent marriage." "Thank you," Isabella said, shaking his hand. "How did you two meet?" the senator asked. "I don't recall seeing you at any of the usual functions." There it was. The invasive question Roman had warned her about. "Through family," Isabella said smoothly. "It was unexpected. The best things usually are." The senator's eyes flicked to Roman. "You're a lucky man." "I know," Roman said, his hand settling on Isabella's lower back. The touch was possessive, protective. "If you'll excuse us, Senator, I see someone I need to speak with." He guided Isabella away before the senator could respond. "That guy's a creep," Isabella muttered, once they were out of earshot. "He's also on 3 oversight committees and takes bribes like it's a second job." Roman's voice was flat. "Which makes him useful. You work with people like that." "I work with whoever I need to work with." Isabella wanted to argue, but a woman intercepted them before she could. Mid-50s, blonde, dripping in diamonds. She looked at Isabella the way someone might look at a questionable piece of art. "Roman, darling," the woman said, air-kissing near his cheek. "I didn't know you were bringing a date." "My wife, actually," Roman corrected. "Isabella, this is Margaret Hastings. She chairs the foundation hosting tonight's event." Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Wife? How unexpected. I thought you'd sworn off marriage after—" She stopped, catching herself. "Well, congratulations." The mention of after hung in the air like smoke. Isabella felt Roman tense beside her, his hand tightening slightly on her back. She jumped in before the silence could stretch too long. "The event is beautiful," Isabella said. You've done an incredible job. Margaret's attention shifted to her, and Isabella saw the assessment happening behind those cold eyes. Thank you. And what is it you do, dear? It was a trap. Isabella could feel it. The right answer would make her acceptable. The wrong answer would mark her as exactly what she was, an outsider who didn't belong. I'm exploring my options, Isabella said carefully. How modern. Margaret's smile sharpened. Roman's first wife was very involved in charity work, cancer research specifically. Such a tragedy what happened. Roman's entire body went rigid. Isabella's heart was pounding, but she kept her expression neutral. I'm sure she was remarkable. Oh, she was. We all thought Roman would never recover, and yet here you are. Margaret's eyes glittered. Life does move on, doesn't it? Excuse us, Roman said, his voice like ice. He didn't wait for a response, just guided Isabella away with enough force that she had to concentrate on not stumbling in her heels. They ended up near the bar. Roman ordered a whiskey, drank half of it in one swallow. I'm sorry, Isabella said quietly. For what? That woman was awful. Margaret's always awful. It's her brand. Roman finished the whiskey, set the glass down harder than necessary. I need some air. He walked away, leaving Isabella standing alone at the bar, surrounded by people she didn't know, in a dress that suddenly felt too tight. She found him 20 minutes later on a balcony overlooking the city. He was leaning against the railing, jacket discarded, tie loosened, staring out at the lights like they might hold answers. He didn't turn when she walked up, but his shoulders shifted. He knew she was there. You didn't have to follow me, he said. I know. Then why did you? Isabella moved to stand beside him, close enough that their arms almost touched. Because you looked like you needed someone. I don't need anyone. Bullshit. That got his attention. Roman turned to look at her, surprise flickering across his face. Excuse me? You heard me. You've spent weeks telling me this marriage doesn't matter, that I don't matter, that everything's just business. But that's bullshit, Roman. I see you. I see how you watch me when you think I'm not looking. I see the white roses you won't admit you're leaving. I see the way you tense up when someone mentions her. Roman's jaw clenched. Don't. Why? Because it's true? Isabella stepped closer, emboldened by anger and wine and weeks of walking on eggshells. You loved her, Caroline, and something happened, and it broke you so badly you're still bleeding. So you built walls and called it strength, bought a wife and called it business. But you can't run from grief forever, Roman. Eventually, it catches up. You don't know what you're talking about. Then tell me I'm wrong. The silence stretched between them, charged and dangerous. Roman's eyes were dark, stormy, filled with something Isabella couldn't name. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. She killed herself. The words hit Isabella like a punch to the chest. Caroline was sick, Roman continued, the confession pouring out like blood from a wound. Cancer, stage 4. The doctor said 6 months, maybe a year with treatment. She didn't want to waste away. Didn't want me to watch her die slowly, so she took pills one night while I was working late, and by the time I found her, she was already gone. Isabella's hand went to her mouth. Roman! She left me a letter, said she was sorry, said she loved me, said she couldn't be strong enough to fight. His laugh was bitter, broken. And I've spent 5 years trying to figure out if I could have saved her, if I'd just been there, if I'd paid more attention, if I'd loved her better. It wasn't your fault. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Isabella reached out, placed her hand over his on the railing. People make choices, sometimes terrible ones, but that doesn't mean you failed her. Roman looked down at their hands, and for a long moment he didn't pull away. After she died, I shut down. Buried myself in work, built the empire bigger, stronger, more ruthless. Because if I kept moving, I didn't have to feel anything. And then your father's debt landed on my desk, and I saw an opportunity. To do what? To prove I could control something. To fill the space she left with something that looked like a life. He finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was raw. I'm sorry, Isabella. You deserved better than being used as a bandage over someone else's wound. Isabella's throat was tight. I'm not a bandage, and you're not using me. Aren't I? No. Because a bandage doesn't fight back. Doesn't call you an asshole when you deserve it. Doesn't follow you onto balconies to tell you you're full of shit. She squeezed his hand. I knew what I was signing up for. And yeah, it sucks sometimes. But you're not the monster you think you are, Roman. You're just a guy who got hurt and hasn't figured out how to heal. Roman stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. How are you this okay? I'm not. I'm terrified. I miss my family. I hate that my life got sold out from under me. But I'm here anyway, trying to make the best of it. Same as you. Something shifted in Roman's expression. The armor cracked a little wider, and underneath Isabella saw vulnerability, want, fear. We should go back inside, he said quietly. Should we? People will notice. Let them. Roman's eyes dropped to her lips, and Isabella's breath caught. For a second, one impossible, electric second, she thought he might kiss her. Really kiss her, not the cold performance from their wedding. But then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Roman pulled back, checked the screen, and his expression hardened. We need to leave. Now. What's wrong? I'll explain in the car. Come on. Vincent had the car waiting by the time they made it outside. Roman's entire demeanor had changed. The vulnerability gone, replaced by cold focus. He was making calls during the ride, his voice clipped and dangerous. What happened? Isabella asked once he hung up. Someone tried to hit one of my warehouses. They failed, but it's a message. A message about what? Roman looked at her, and for the first time she saw genuine worry in his eyes. That I'm vulnerable. That I have something they can target. His jaw tightened. You need to stay in the penthouse until this is handled. I've been staying in the penthouse for 2 months. I mean it, Isabella. No going out, no leaving without Vincent, no exceptions. You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. This life, what I do, it comes with enemies. People who would hurt you to hurt me. And if anything happened to you because of... He stopped, the sentence hanging unfinished. Because of what? Isabella pressed. Roman's eyes met hers, and the intensity there made her chest ache. Because you matter more than you should. The confession sat between them like a live wire. Isabella wanted to push, to ask what that meant, but the car pulled up to the building before she could. Vincent opened the door and Roman was moving immediately, his hand on her back as he guided her inside with the kind of protective urgency that made her skin prickle. The elevator ride was silent. When they reached the penthouse, Roman checked every room before letting Isabella out of his sight. It would have been sweet if it wasn't so clearly born from fear. You're safe here, he said, more to himself than to her. The building's secure. My men are on every entrance. Roman, I'm fine. You don't know that. Neither do you. He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes was something Isabella had never seen before. Raw, desperate. I can't lose anyone else. The words broke her heart. Isabella crossed the space between them and did something reckless. She wrapped her arms around him, pulling him into a hug that he probably didn't want and definitely didn't expect. For a second, Roman stood frozen. Then, slowly, his arms came around her, and he held on like she was the only thing keeping him upright. They stood there in the middle of the penthouse, two broken people clinging to each other, and for the first time since this whole mess started, Isabella felt like they were on the same side. The next morning, Isabella woke up to find Roman already gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter. Stay inside, I'll be back tonight. R. She crumpled it in her fist, frustrated. After everything last night, the confessions, the vulnerability, the moment on the balcony, he was back to giving orders and disappearing. Elena found her pacing the living room an hour later. Mrs. DeLuca, can I get you anything? A way out of this building would be nice. Elena's expression didn't change. Mr. DeLuca was clear about his instructions. Mr. DeLuca can go to hell. I'll pass that along. Despite everything, Isabella smiled. Do you ever get tired of managing his life? Every day. Elena poured herself a cup of coffee, which Isabella had never seen her do. But he pays well, and I've learned not to ask questions I don't want answered. How long have you worked for him? 6 years. So you knew Caroline? Elena's hand paused on the coffee cup. I did. What was she like? Why do you want to know? Because he won't tell me. Isabella sat at the island, studying Elena's face. And because I'm tired of competing with a ghost. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, she was kind, too kind for this world. She believed Roman could be saved from what he was becoming, and she tried. But you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Do you think he wanted to be saved? I think he wanted her, and when she died, he decided nothing else was worth wanting. Until now, Isabella said quietly. Elena looked at her, something like pity in her eyes. Be careful, Mrs. DeLuca. Men like Roman don't know how to love without destroying things, and you're standing right in the blast radius. The warning settled in Isabella's chest like a stone. Roman came home late, just like he'd said. Isabella was in the library, pretending to read, but really just staring at the same page for an hour. She heard the elevator, the sound of voices, Roman giving orders to someone, and then footsteps. He appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted. There was blood on his shirt cuff. You're hurt, Isabella said, standing. It's not mine. That's not reassuring. Roman almost smiled. Probably not. He loosened his tie, moved to the window. Everything's handled. You're safe. What about you? I'm always safe. Liar? This time he did smile. Small. Tired. Real. Maybe. Isabella walked over to him, and without thinking about it, reached up to straighten his collar. Her fingers brushed his neck, and Roman went very still. Thank you, she said quietly, for protecting me. It's my job. Is that all it is? Roman's eyes searched hers, and for a second, Isabella thought he might actually answer honestly. Instead, he caught her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in a gesture so gentle it made her heart stutter. You should get some sleep, he said. So should you. I will. But they both knew he was lying. Isabella left him standing by the window, staring out at the city, carrying the weight of a world she was only beginning to understand. And as she walked back to her room, she realized something terrifying. She was falling for him. The Mafia boss who'd bought her. The broken man who hid behind control. The widower who couldn't let go of grief. She was falling, and there was no way to stop it. The realization kept her awake most of the night. By morning, she'd made a decision. If Roman wouldn't let her in, she'd find her own way. She'd learn his world, understand his enemies, figure out how to exist in this life without losing herself. She started by asking Elena questions. Carefully, casually. About how the household ran, who reported to whom, what Roman's schedule looked like. Elena answered some, deflected others. But Isabella was patient. She also started paying attention during the few public events Roman brought her to, watched how people interacted with him, who deferred, who challenged, who looked afraid. She learned that Roman's empire wasn't just crime. It was real estate, shipping, investments, legal businesses built on illegal foundations. He was legitimate enough to sit at charity galas and dangerous enough that no one questioned where the money came from. And she learned that the attempt on the warehouse wasn't an isolated incident. There were others, small things, tests. Someone was pushing boundaries, seeing how far they could go before Roman pushed back. Who's doing it? Isabella asked one morning over breakfast. Roman looked up from his coffee. Who's doing what? The attacks, the tests. Someone's coming after you. Who? That's not your concern. Like hell it isn't. You told me to stay locked in this building because I'm in danger. I think that makes it my concern. Roman set down his cup, studying her. There are a lot of people who'd like to see me fall. Could be any of them. But you have a guess. I have several. Are you going to do something about it? Eventually. That's not a plan, Roman. That's waiting to get killed. His expression shifted, something like amusement crossing his face. You worried about me? Don't be an ass. I'm always an ass. You said so yourself. Isabella threw a piece of toast at him. It bounced off his chest, and Roman actually laughed. The sound was so unexpected, so genuine, that Isabella froze. Did you just laugh? Don't get used to it. But he was smiling, and Isabella felt something warm bloom in her chest. This was progress. Small, fragile, but real. That afternoon, while Roman was out, Isabella did something stupid. She went into his study again. She told herself she was just curious, that she wanted to understand him better. But really, she was looking for something specific. Anything about Caroline. Anything that would help her understand what she was up against. She found more letters, tucked in a different drawer wrapped in a ribbon that had faded with time. Isabella read them all, guilt twisting in her stomach with every word. Caroline had been devoted, loving, the kind of person who wrote poetry and believed in second chances. She'd seen good in Roman when everyone else saw danger. And then, near the bottom of the stack, Isabella found the last letter, the one Caroline had left before she died. My dearest Roman, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I'm so sorry. I know you'll blame yourself, but please don't. This was my choice. I couldn't bear the thought of you watching me waste away, becoming a ghost in our home. I wanted you to remember me alive, happy, whole. You deserve better than this. Better than me. Better than the grief I know I'm leaving you with. Please, Roman, don't let my death turn you into something you're not. Don't bury yourself in darkness because I couldn't face the light. I love you. I'll always love you. But I need you to let me go. Forever yours. Caroline Isabella was crying before she finished reading. She understood now. Why Roman had built walls. Why he'd married her, a stranger, rather than risk loving someone again. Why he looked at her sometimes like she was both a gift and a curse. He was terrified. Not of enemies or bullets or losing his empire. He was terrified of caring about someone and watching them leave. Find what you were looking for? Isabella spun around, heart hammering. Roman stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I'm sorry, she said immediately, swiping at her tears. I shouldn't have. No, you shouldn't have. He walked into the room, took the letter from her hands, looked at it like it might burn him. But I'm not surprised you did. I just wanted to understand. And do you understand? Isabella met his eyes. I think so. Roman set the letter down carefully, like it was made of glass. Caroline thought she was protecting me, that if she ended things on her terms, it would hurt less. But it didn't. It just meant I couldn't save her, couldn't fight for her, couldn't do anything except find her body and live with the fact that I wasn't enough to make her want to stay. Roman, that's not. It is. His voice was rough, and I swore I'd never let myself feel that helpless again. That I'd control everything, keep everyone at arm's length, make sure no one could hurt me like that. And then you married me. And then I married you. He looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. Which was supposed to be easy, simple, a business arrangement that wouldn't cost me anything. But you're not easy, Isabella. You're stubborn and brave, and you ask questions I don't want to answer. You throw toast at me and call me an asshole and somehow make this empty place feel less empty. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the storm in his eyes. And it scares the hell out of me. Isabella's breath caught. Why? Because I'm starting to care about you, and I don't know how to do that without destroying everything. The confession hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Isabella reached out, her hand finding his. Then we figure it out together. What if I can't? Then we fail together. She squeezed his hand. But at least we won't be alone. Roman stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he pulled her closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. You're dangerous, he whispered. So are you. I could hurt you. You already have, and I'm still here. Something broke in Roman's expression, the last wall crumbling, and then he was kissing her, not the cold performative kiss from their wedding, but something real, desperate, like he was drowning and she was air. Isabella kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Roman rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he said. Probably. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. But you're willing to try. Isabella looked into his eyes, those storm gray eyes that had haunted her for months, and made her choice. Yeah, I'm willing to try. Everything changed after that kiss. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic shift where suddenly Roman was a different person and Isabella lived in a fairy tale. Real life didn't work like that. People didn't heal overnight, and damaged men didn't wake up fixed just because someone cared about them. But something cracked open between them, a door neither of them had meant to unlock. Roman still left early and came home late. Still carried the weight of his empire like a physical thing. Still had nights where the darkness in him was too heavy for words. But now, when he came home, he found Isabella, sought her out, sat with her in the library or the kitchen or wherever she happened to be, and the silence between them felt different, warmer, less like strangers occupying the same space and more like two people learning how to exist together. The white roses kept appearing. Isabella stopped pretending she didn't know who left them. One morning, about a week after the kiss, she found Roman in the kitchen earlier than usual. He was making coffee, still in his dress shirt from the night before, sleeves rolled up, looking like he hadn't slept. "Rough night?" Isabella asked, padding in barefoot. Roman glanced at her, and something softened in his expression. "You could say that." "Want to talk about it?" "Not really. Want company anyway?" He poured a second cup of coffee without answering, which was answer enough. They sat at the island together, drinking in comfortable silence. Isabella was getting used to his moods, learning to read the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. This morning, he looked worried, not scared. Roman never looked scared, but concerned in a way that made her stomach twist. "What happened?" she asked finally. "Nothing I can't handle." "That's not what I asked." Roman set down his cup, ran a hand through his hair. "Someone's been asking questions about you, about where you came from, why we got married so fast." Isabella's chest tightened. "Who?" "Could be anyone, right? Rival families, federal investigators, journalists looking for a story." He looked at her, and the concern in his eyes was genuine. "I need you to be careful, more careful than you've been. I've been locked in this building for 2 months. How much more careful can I be? I mean with what you say, who you trust. If anyone approaches you, anyone, you tell me immediately. You're scaring me again." "Good." Roman reached across the island, his hand covering hers. The gesture was becoming familiar, natural. "I can handle threats to me. But threats to you..." He trailed off, his jaw tightening. "That's different." Isabella turned her hand over, threading her fingers through his. "I'm not going anywhere." "You might not have a choice." "What does that mean?" But Roman just shook his head, pulling his hand back. "Forget it. Just be careful." He left before she could push further, and Isabella sat alone in the kitchen, fear creeping up her spine like ice. Later that day, Elena found her staring out the window, watching the city 40 floors below. "Mrs. DeLuca, are you all right?" Isabella turned. "Define all right." Elena's expression was unreadable. "Mr. DeLuca is concerned about you. He's concerned about everything. Not like this." Elena moved closer, her voice dropping. "I've worked for him for 6 years. I've never seen him like this with anyone. Not even Caroline." "What do you mean?" Caroline was his world, but she was also fragile. He protected her by keeping her separate from his work, never told her details, never brought her into the darker parts of his life. Elena paused. "With you, it's different. He's trying to prepare you, warn you, keep you close while also pushing you away because he doesn't know how to do both. That's not sustainable." "No, it's not." Elena's eyes were kind. "He's going to have to make a choice eventually, the Empire or you, and I don't think he knows which one he'll choose." The words sat heavy in Isabella's chest for the rest of the day. That night, Roman came home with blood on his knuckles and a darkness in his eyes that made her afraid to ask questions. He went straight to his wing without saying a word. Isabella waited an hour, then 2. Finally, she went looking for him. She found him in his bathroom, trying to clean the blood off his hands with shaking fingers. His shirt was on the floor, and there were bruises blooming across his ribs, fresh, angry marks that made Isabella's breath catch. "Let me help," she said from the doorway. Roman looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "You shouldn't be here." "Probably not." Isabella walked in, took the cloth from his hands, and ran it under warm water. "But I am anyway." She cleaned his knuckles carefully, her touch gentle even though her hands were shaking. The cuts weren't deep, but they were raw, and Roman flinched when she pressed too hard. "Sorry," she murmured. "It's fine." "What happened?" "Nothing." "Roman," he sighed, leaning back against the counter. "Someone thought they could intimidate one of my men. Sent a message by putting him in the hospital. I sent a message back." "By doing this?" by making sure they understood what happens when you come after what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered her. Instead, it sent heat through her chest. Isabella finished cleaning his hands, then gently touched the bruises on his ribs. Roman sucked in a breath and she pulled back. Sorry. Don't be. His voice was rough. Feels better when you touch it. Their eyes met. The air between them shifted, charged with something dangerous and inevitable. Isabella, Roman said, her name a warning. Yeah? You should go. Why? Because if you don't, I'm going to do something we might regret. Isabella's heart was pounding. She should leave, should turn around and walk away and let the distance between them stay safe. But she was tired of safe, tired of pretending she didn't feel what she felt. What if I don't want to go? She whispered. Roman's control snapped. He kissed her hard, his hands coming up to frame her face, and Isabella kissed him back just as desperately. This wasn't gentle, wasn't sweet. It was raw and hungry and tasted like blood and need. Roman backed her against the wall, his body pressing against hers, and Isabella's hands found his hair, pulling him closer. She could feel his heart pounding against her chest, could feel the tension in his muscles, the barely controlled violence he carried like a second skin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Roman rested his forehead against hers. This is a bad idea, he said. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. I don't care. Roman pulled back enough to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her chest ache. You should. I'm dangerous, Isabella. I hurt people. It's what I do. You won't hurt me. How do you know? Because you're trying too hard to push me away. If you wanted to hurt me, you would have done it already. Roman's laugh was bitter. That's not how this works. Then explain it to me. I can't. He stepped back, putting distance between them. Us, it's complicated. There are things you don't understand, things I can't tell you. Try me. No. Isabella's frustration boiled over. Why? Because I'm too fragile, too naive, too much of an outsider to handle your world? Because the more you know, the more danger you're in. Roman's voice was rough, almost desperate. You think I want to keep you in the dark? You think I like lying to you? I'm trying to protect you. From what? From me. From this life. From everything I touch that turns to blood and regret. He ran his hands through his hair, pacing. Caroline knew too much, asked too many questions, got too close. And when the pressure came, when my enemies started circling, she couldn't handle it. The stress, the fear, the constant looking over her shoulder, it broke her. And I watched it happen and couldn't stop it. Isabella's anger dissolved into something softer. I'm not Caroline. I know. Then stop treating me like I'm made of glass. Roman stopped pacing, looked at her with those storm gray eyes. What if you break anyway? Then I break, but at least it'll be my choice. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Roman crossed the space between them in 2 strides, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her again. Softer this time, slower, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. When they pulled apart, he said, I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me. Isabella's breath caught. Good. Because I'm already gone. That night, for the first time since their wedding, Isabella didn't sleep alone. She woke up in Roman's bed, sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize, wrapped in sheets that smelled like him. For a second, she panicked, not sure where she was, how she'd gotten there. And then memory came flooding back. Last night, the bathroom, the kiss, Roman carrying her to his room because neither of them wanted to be alone. They hadn't slept together, not like that. Roman had just held her, his arms around her like she was something precious, and they talked until exhaustion pulled them both under. He'd told her things, about growing up in a family where violence was currency, about building his empire from nothing because his father had been too weak to hold it, about the people he'd lost and the choices he'd made and the weight of being responsible for hundreds of lives that depended on his decisions. Isabella had listened, asked questions, didn't judge, and somewhere in the early morning hours Roman had whispered, I don't deserve you. She'd kissed him instead of answering because words felt inadequate. Now she rolled over to find the bed empty. A note on the pillow. Had to leave early. Stay as long as you want. Or Isabella smiled despite herself. She got up, borrowed one of Roman's shirts, and wandered back to her own wing to shower and change. Elena found her in the kitchen an hour later, looking annoyingly knowing. "Good morning, Mrs. DeLuca." "Morning. Sleep well?" Isabella shot her a look. "Don't start." Elena's smile was small but genuine. "I'm glad. He needs someone. He needs therapy." "That too." They both laughed, and for a moment Isabella felt almost normal, like this was her life, her home, her family. The feeling lasted until Roman came home that evening, his expression dark. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. Isabella's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "My father wants to meet you." "Your father?" I thought. "He's alive, just not involved in the day-to-day operations anymore." Roman's jaw was tight. "He lives upstate, rarely comes to the city, but he's heard about you and he's demanding a meeting." "Okay, so we meet him." "It's not that simple." Roman poured himself a drink, downed it in one swallow. "My father is difficult. He built this empire before I took it over. He's ruthless in ways I've spent years trying to move past. And if he decides you're a liability..." "What? He'll kill me?" "He'll try." The casual way Roman said it made Isabella's blood run cold. "You're serious?" "Completely." Roman looked at her, and the fear in his eyes was real. "My father doesn't care about contracts or arrangements. He cares about power and perception. If he thinks our marriage makes me look weak, he'll do whatever it takes to remove that weakness." "And by remove, you mean..." "I mean you need to be perfect, poised, unshakable. He'll test you, push you, try to find cracks. And if he finds them..." Isabella sat down, her legs suddenly shaky. "When is this meeting?" "Tomorrow. He's coming to the penthouse for dinner." "That's not a lot of notice." "He doesn't give notice, he gives orders." Roman crossed to her, knelt in front of her chair so they were eye level. "Listen to me. Tomorrow night you need to be Mrs. Roman DeLuca, not Isabella, not the woman I..." He stopped, swallowed hard. "You need to be cold, controlled, the perfect Mafia wife. Can you do that?" Isabella wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him this was too much, too fast, too dangerous. But she looked into his eyes and saw genuine fear, and she couldn't do it. "I can do that," she said. Roman's hand found hers, squeezed. "Thank you." That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. She lay awake thinking about what tomorrow would bring, about meeting the man who'd built an empire on blood and fear, about having to perform for someone who might literally kill her if she failed. Around 2 a.m, she gave up and went to the library. Roman was already there, sitting in the dark, staring out the window. "Can't sleep either?" Isabella asked. "Never can before I see him." She sat down next to him, and for a long moment, they just existed in the silence. "Tell me about him," Isabella said finally. Roman was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "My father is what I would have become if Caroline hadn't softened me. He sees people as tools or obstacles, nothing in between. He taught me that love is weakness, that caring about anything makes you vulnerable. And for a long time I believed him." "What changed?" "Caroline. She showed me there was another way, that you could be strong and still feel things, that power didn't have to come from fear." Roman's voice was rough. "And when she died, my father said it proved his point, that I never should have let myself care, that her death was punishment for being weak." Isabella's chest tightened. "That's horrible." "That's who he is." Roman finally looked at her. "Tomorrow, he's going to try to break you, find your weaknesses, test whether you're strong enough to be part of this family, and I need you to survive it, because if you don't..." "I will," Isabella interrupted. "I survived you, didn't I?" Roman's smile was small and sad. "Barely." "Then I'll barely survive him too." She meant it as a joke, but Roman didn't laugh. He just pulled her closer, his arm around her shoulders, and they sat together in the dark, bracing for the storm that was coming. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Elena helped Isabella pick out the right dress. Black, elegant, conservative. Nothing too flashy, nothing that screamed outsider. "You need to look like you belong," Elena explained, "like you were born into this life." "I wasn't." "I know, but he can't know that. Isabella practiced her posture, her responses, the way she held her wine glass and made small talk. It felt like preparing for war, which maybe it was. Roman was tense all day. She caught him making phone calls, giving orders, checking security. Whatever was about to happen, he was taking it seriously. At 6 o'clock, Vincent let her know that Roman's father had arrived. Isabella's hands were shaking as she walked into the living room. The man standing by the windows was older than she expected, late 60s maybe. Silver hair, still thick, expensive suit. He had Roman's eyes, the same storm gray, but where Roman sometimes showed warmth, his father's were ice. "Father," Roman said, his voice carefully neutral. "This is my wife, Isabella." The old man turned and his gaze raked over Isabella like she was livestock being appraised. "So you're the girl who married my son," he said. His voice was smooth, educated, dangerous. "Come here. Let me look at you." Isabella forced herself to walk forward, to meet his eyes without flinching. "Mr. DeLuca," she said, extending her hand. "It's nice to finally meet you." He didn't take her hand, just studied her face like he was searching for flaws. "You're younger than I expected. Prettier, too. Where did Roman find you?" "We met through family," Isabella said smoothly, repeating the lie they'd practiced. "Family. How convenient." The old man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "And what does your family do?" "My father worked in finance. My mother is a teacher." "Finance? Interesting." He finally shook her hand, his grip firm. "And they approved of this marriage? Their daughter marrying into our world?" It was a trap. Isabella could feel it. "They trust my judgment. Do they?" The old man released her hand, turned to Roman. "She's well trained, I'll give you that." Roman's jaw tightened. "She's my wife, not a dog." "Semantics." The old man moved to the bar, poured himself a drink. "Shall we eat?" Dinner was torture. Roman's father, he insisted Isabella call him Vincent Sr., asked questions designed to make her stumble. About her education, her family background, her plans for the future, how she spent her days, what she knew about Roman's business. Isabella answered carefully, keeping her responses vague but confident. She could feel Roman beside her, tense as a wire, ready to intervene if things went wrong. "You're very composed," Vincent Sr. said halfway through the meal. "Most women would be intimidated." "Should I be?" Isabella asked. "Most would think so." "I'm not most women." Vincent Sr.'s eyes narrowed. "No, I suppose you're not." He cut into his steak with surgical precision. "Tell me, Isabella, what do you think of my son's work?" "Another trap." Isabella chose her words carefully. "I think he's built something impressive, something that will last." "Built on what?" "On his ability to make hard choices." "And you approve of these hard choices?" "I approve of him." Vincent Sr. set down his fork, studying her. "You're either very brave or very stupid. I haven't decided which." "Does it matter?" Isabella met his eyes. "Either way, I'm here." For a long moment, silence stretched across the table. Then Vincent Sr. laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "She's got spine. I'll give you that, Roman. Better than the last one." Roman's hand clenched around his fork. "Don't!" "Why not?" "Caroline was weak, couldn't handle the pressure. This one seems sturdier." "I said don't." Roman's voice was dangerous. "Caroline is off limits." "Sensitive subject?" Vincent Sr. smiled. "Good. Means you still remember what happens when you let feelings cloud judgment." Isabella felt Roman about to explode and put her hand on his arm. A gentle touch. A silent message. "I've got this." "With all due respect, Mr. DeLuca," Isabella said, her voice steady. "Your son's judgment seems sound to me. After all, he built on what you started and made it stronger. That takes more than just cold calculation. It takes vision." Vincent Sr.'s eyes snapped to her. "Are you lecturing me, girl?" "I'm stating facts." The old man stared at her, and Isabella held her ground, heart pounding, but refusing to look away. Then he laughed again. "You've got fire. I like that. Maybe you will survive after all." He stood, dinner apparently over. "Roman, we need to talk, privately." Roman's hand found Isabella's under the table, squeezed once. A silent apology. Then he stood and followed his father to the study. Isabella sat alone at the dining table, shaking so hard she had to grip the edge to keep steady. Elena appeared from nowhere, touched her shoulder gently. "You did well. I thought I was going to throw up." "But you didn't. That's what matters." Isabella looked toward the study. "What are they talking about?" "Nothing good." Elena started clearing plates. "Mr. DeLuca Sr. doesn't make social calls. He's here for a reason." "What reason?" Elena just shook her head and kept working. 20 minutes later, raised voices came from the study. Not loud enough to hear words, but the anger was clear. Isabella moved closer, unable to help herself. "Not your decision to make!" Roman's voice, sharp with fury. "Everything is my decision," Vincent Sr. shot back. "I built this empire. You just maintain it. I've tripled what you built. Don't act like you've made us soft, weak. This marriage is proof. This marriage is legitimate, legal. Everything you said I needed to, I said you needed a wife who could handle this life. Not some girl you're clearly getting attached to." Silence. Then Roman's voice, low and deadly. "Get out." "Excuse me? You heard me. Get out of my home." "This isn't your home, boy. It's mine. Everything you have is mine." "Then take it." Roman's voice was cold. "Take the penthouse. Take the empire. Take everything. But you don't get to tell me who I care about." Isabella's breath caught. More silence. Then footsteps. The study door opened, and Vincent Sr. emerged, his expression carved from ice. He saw Isabella standing in the hallway and smiled, a terrible, knowing smile. "Enjoy it while it lasts, girl. Men like my son don't stay soft for long. Eventually, he'll remember what he is. And when he does, you'll either adapt or break. Either way, it won't be pretty." He left without another word. Roman emerged from the study a moment later, looking like he'd been through a war. When he saw Isabella, something in his expression cracked. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For him. For putting you through that. For—" Isabella crossed to him, wrapped her arms around him, and held on. Roman stood frozen for a second, then his arms came around her and he buried his face in her hair. "You stood up to him," Isabella whispered. "For me. Of course I did. He's going to make you pay for that. I don't care." But Isabella could feel the tension in his body, the fear he was trying to hide. Roman's father wasn't just difficult. He was dangerous, and they'd just made an enemy. That night, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to fall apart. She was right. 3 days later, Roman came home in the middle of the afternoon, his face ashen. "We need to talk," he said. Isabella looked up from her book, stomach dropping. "What's wrong?" Roman sat down heavily, ran his hands through his hair. "My father's making moves, talking to the old families, suggesting I'm compromised, that my marriage has made me weak. Can he do that? He can try. And if enough people believe him, he can force me out, take back control. Of the empire? Of everything." Roman looked at her, and the desperation in his eyes broke her heart. "He's using you as proof, saying I chose personal feelings over business interests, that I'm no longer fit to lead." Isabella's chest felt tight. "What does that mean for us?" "It means I have to make a choice." Roman's voice was rough. "The empire or you?" The words hit her like a physical blow. "Roman, if I choose the empire, I have to end this, send you away, prove to everyone that you meant nothing, that it was just a business arrangement that ran its course. And if you choose me, then I lose everything I've built. My father takes over, and everyone who depends on me, my men, their families, the people whose lives are tied to this organization, they all suffer." Isabella felt sick. "That's not a choice. That's a trap." "I know." Roman stood, started pacing. "And I don't know what to do, because for the first time in my life, I care about something more than power, and it's destroying me." Isabella stood, crossed to him, made him look at her. "Listen to me. I'm not going to be the reason you lose everything. I won't do that to you." "Isabella, no, I mean it." She cupped his face in her hands. "I'll leave, quietly. We'll make it look like it was my choice, that I couldn't handle this life. It'll protect you, and absolutely not." "Roman, I said no." His hands came up to cover hers. I'm not losing you. Not for him. Not for anyone. Then what are we going to do? Roman pulled her close, held her like she might disappear. I don't know, but we'll figure it out, together. Isabella wanted to believe him, wanted to think there was a way through this that didn't end in blood or heartbreak. But as she stood in Roman's arms, feeling him shake with fear and rage and helplessness, she knew the truth. One of them was going to have to make a sacrifice, and she had a terrible feeling it was going to be her. The next week felt like waiting for an execution. Roman threw himself into damage control, meetings with the families, late-night phone calls where Isabella could hear him negotiating, threatening, promising. He was fighting for his position, and it was taking everything he had. Isabella watched him come apart piece by piece, the man who'd kissed her in his study, who'd held her through the night, who'd stood up to his father. That man was disappearing behind walls of necessity and survival. I have to go to Chicago, Roman told her one morning. His face was haggard, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. 3 days? Maybe 4? There's a sit-down with the Western Territories. If I can get their support, my father can't move against me. Okay. Vincent will stay with you, and I'm putting extra security on the building. Roman, I'll be fine. You don't know that. He grabbed his jacket, checked his phone for the 100th time. My father's desperate. Desperate men do stupid things. Isabella crossed to him, straightened his collar even though it didn't need straightening. Then go. Do what you have to do. I'll be here when you get back. Roman caught her hand, pressed his lips to her palm. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. And if anything feels wrong, anything, you call me immediately. I will. He kissed her then, hard and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark. I'm going to fix this. I don't know how yet, but I will. Isabella wanted to believe him. Instead, she just nodded and watched him leave, that terrible certainty settling deeper in her chest. Something bad was coming. She could feel it. The first 2 days without Roman were quiet, too quiet. Isabella tried to keep herself busy. Read, watched television, called her mother and lied about how happy she was. Marcus texted her constantly, asking if she was okay, and she lied to him too. Elena was around more than usual, hovering. Isabella caught her checking the security monitors multiple times, and when she asked about it, Elena just said, precaution. On the 3rd day, Isabella woke up to find a letter slipped under her bedroom door. Her hands shook as she opened it. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned. Vincent Sr.'s. My dear Isabella, you seem like an intelligent young woman, so I'm going to speak plainly. My son is at a crossroads. He can continue down the path of sentiment and weakness that will ultimately destroy everything we've built. Or he can make the hard choice and remove the distraction that's compromising his judgment. That distraction is you. I'm offering you a way out that protects everyone. Leave quietly. Disappear. I'll ensure your family is taken care of, better than Roman ever could. Your mother's medical bills paid, your brother's education funded. A trust in your name that will keep you comfortable for life. All you have to do is walk away before my son destroys himself trying to keep you. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires, and I'll handle the situation my own way. Choose wisely. V. DeLuca Sr. Isabella read the letter 3 times, her stomach churning. He was bribing her to leave, threatening her if she stayed. And the worst part was he wasn't completely wrong. Roman was destroying himself trying to protect her. She could see it, feel it. Every decision he made, every compromise, every risk, it all came back to her. She called Roman immediately. He answered on the first ring. Isabella, what's wrong? Your father sent me a letter. Silence. Then, what kind of letter? Isabella read it to him, her voice steady even though her hands weren't. When she finished, Roman's voice was deadly quiet. Don't respond. Don't do anything. I'm coming home. The meeting. Fuck the meeting. I'm coming home. Roman, you can't. If you leave now, you'll lose everything. I don't care. I do. Isabella's voice cracked. I care, because I'm not going to be the reason you lose what you've spent your entire life building. Isabella, listen to me. No, you listen to me. She took a breath, steadied herself. Your father's right about one thing. I'm a distraction, a weakness he can exploit. And as long as I'm here, he can use me against you. So what are you saying? Isabella closed her eyes, the words like glass in her throat. I'm saying maybe I should take his offer. The silence on the other end was deafening. You're not serious, Roman said finally. Your empire or me, Roman. Those are the choices. And I can't let you choose me and watch everything burn. That's not your decision to make. Yes, it is, because I love you too much to let you destroy yourself. The confession hung in the air between them. Isabella hadn't meant to say it, hadn't meant to make it real. But there it was. The truth she'd been hiding from even herself. Roman's breath hitched. Isabella, I have to go, she said quickly, before she could break. Just finish your meeting. We'll talk when you get back. She hung up before he could respond. For a long time, Isabella just sat there, staring at the letter, trying to breathe through the pain crushing her chest. She loved him, and because she loved him, she had to leave. It was the only way to protect him from his father, from himself, from a war he couldn't win without losing everything that mattered. Elena found her an hour later, still sitting on the bed, the letter clutched in her hand. You're thinking about taking the offer, Elena said. Not a question. How did you... I've worked for this family long enough to know how Vincent Sr. operates, and I saw the envelope. Elena sat down beside her. Are you going to do it? I don't know. Isabella's voice was small. What would you do? Elena was quiet for a long moment. I'd ask myself if leaving would actually save him, or just break him in a different way. What do you mean? Roman's been broken before. When Caroline died, it nearly destroyed him. He built walls so high nobody could reach him. Until you. Elena's eyes were kind. You leaving might save his empire, but it'll kill something in him that's only just started to heal. And if I stay, his father will destroy everything anyway. Maybe, maybe not. Vincent Sr.'s ruthless, but he's not stupid. If Roman fights back hard enough, shows he's willing to burn it all down rather than give in, the old man might back off. Bullies usually do when the cost gets too high. That's a big gamble. Love usually is. Isabella looked at the letter again, then at Elena. You think I should stay. I think you should do whatever lets you sleep at night. But I also think you should talk to Roman before making any decisions. He deserves that much. She was right. Isabella knew she was right. But the thought of telling Roman she was leaving, watching his face when she walked away, it felt impossible. Her phone rang. Roman again. Isabella stared at it, let it go to voicemail. He called back immediately. Then again. Then again. On the fifth call, Elena picked it up. Mr. DeLuca, she's safe. Yes, I'm with her. No, she's not answering because she's trying to think. Elena paused, listening. I'll tell her. And sir, come home. Whatever you're doing there, it's not worth losing her over. She hung up and handed the phone back to Isabella. He's on his way. Should be back by tonight. Isabella felt panic spike through her chest. I can't see him. Not yet. I don't know what to say. Then figure it out. Because he's not going to let you avoid this conversation. But Isabella couldn't figure it out. Couldn't untangle the mess of love and fear and self-sacrifice knotted in her chest. So instead, she did something stupid. She called Vincent Sr. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting. Miss Quinn, I was hoping to hear from you. I'll take your offer, Isabella said, the words tasting like poison. On one condition. I'm listening. You back off Roman completely. No more undermining him. No more threats. You let him run the empire the way he sees fit, and you stay out of his life. Vincent Sr. chuckled. You're negotiating. How bold. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. Silence. Then, fine. You have my word. Leave quietly, and I'll leave Roman alone. I want it in writing, and I want the money for my family set up before I go. Done. I'll have the papers drawn up by tomorrow morning. How soon can you be ready to leave? Isabella's chest felt like it was caving in. Give me 2 days. 48 hours. After that, I expect you gone. Do we have an understanding? Yes. She hung up before she could change her mind. For the next hour, Isabella moved on autopilot. She packed a bag, just the essentials, enough to disappear. She wrote letters, one to her mother, one to Marcus, explaining everything and nothing. She tried to write one to Roman and couldn't get past the first line. I'm sorry. Everything else felt inadequate. Elena found her surrounded by half-packed suitcases and crumpled paper, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, honey." Elena sat down beside her, pulled her into a hug. "What did you do?" "I called him, made the deal. I'm leaving in 2 days." "Does Roman know?" "Not yet." "He's going to lose his mind." "I know." Isabella wiped her eyes, tried to pull herself together. "But it's the right thing to do. It has to be." The right thing and the easy thing are rarely the same. Nothing about this is easy. Elena held her while she cried, and for a moment, Isabella let herself break, let herself feel the full weight of what she was giving up. Then she pulled herself together, wiped her face, and tried to pretend she wasn't falling apart. Roman came home at 10 that night. Isabella heard the elevator, the sound of him moving through the penthouse. She was in the library, sitting in the dark, trying to find the courage to face him. He found her anyway. He always did. "Isabella!" His voice was rough. He looked exhausted, worried, desperate. "We need to talk." "I know." Roman crossed to her, knelt in front of her chair so they were eye level. "Tell me you didn't call my father." Isabella couldn't meet his eyes. "I can't tell you that." "Fuck." Roman stood, started pacing. "What did you agree to?" "I'm leaving. In 2 days, he's setting up money for my family. And in exchange, he leaves you alone." "Absolutely not." "It's already done, Roman." "Then undo it." His voice was sharp, desperate. "Call him back. Tell him the deal's off." "I can't." "Why the hell not?" "Because this is the only way to protect you." Isabella stood facing him. "Your father's right. I'm making you weak, vulnerable. As long as I'm here, he can use me against you. So I'm removing myself from the equation." "That's not your choice to make." "Yes, it is. It's my life, Roman. My choice. Not when it destroys mine." Roman grabbed her shoulders, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make her look at him. "You think I can just let you walk away, pretend you never mattered, go back to the way things were before?" "You did it after Caroline." The words were cruel. Isabella knew it the moment they left her mouth. Roman flinched like she'd slapped him. "That was different," he said quietly. "How?" "Because I didn't have a choice. Caroline made her decision, and I had to live with it. But you—" His voice cracked. "You're choosing to leave. You're choosing to break this. And I don't know how to survive that." Isabella's vision blurred with tears. "I'm doing this because I love you." "Then stay, please. We'll figure something else out. I'll fight him. I'll fight the whole damn world if I have to, but please don't leave." "And what happens when you lose everything? When the empire falls apart and everyone who depends on you suffers because you chose me over them? How long before you resent me for that?" "I would never—" "You don't know that. People change when they lose things that matter, and I can't watch you turn into someone you hate because of me." Roman's hands dropped from her shoulders. He looked defeated, broken. "So that's it? You've already decided." "I'm trying to do the right thing." "The right thing is staying and fighting for us. The right thing is making sure you don't lose everything you've built." They stood there, the distance between them feeling like miles, even though they were only feet apart. "When do you leave?" Roman asked finally, his voice hollow. "Day after tomorrow." "Morning." He nodded slowly. "Then I have 2 days to change your mind." "Roman, I'm not giving up on us, Isabella. Not without a fight. So if you're really going to leave, you'll have to do it knowing I did everything I could to make you stay." He walked out before she could respond. Isabella sank back into the chair, buried her face in her hands, and cried until there was nothing left. The next day was torture. Roman didn't go to work, didn't take calls, didn't leave the penthouse. He stayed close to Isabella, following her from room to room, not saying much but making his presence known. They had breakfast together, lunch, dinner, every meal silent and heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. At one point, Isabella found him in her room, looking at the packed suitcase on her bed. "You really meant it," he said quietly. "You're actually leaving." "I have to." "No, you don't. You want to. There's a difference." "That's not fair." Roman turned to face her. "None of this is fair, but I'm not going to make this easy for you. You want to leave? Fine. But you're going to have to look me in the eye and tell me you don't love me." "I do love you. That's why." "Then prove it. Stay." "I can't." Can't or won't. Isabella's composure cracked. Both. I can't stay and watch your father destroy you. I won't be the reason you lose everything. Don't you understand? Loving you means wanting what's best for you, even if it kills me. What's best for me is you. Here. With me. Building a life together. In what world, Roman? Look at us. Look at this situation. Your father's threatening to take everything. The families are questioning your leadership. We're backed into a corner with no way out except for me to leave. There's always another way. Not this time. Roman stepped closer, close enough that she could see the pain in his eyes. If you leave tomorrow, I will spend the rest of my life regretting that I couldn't save you from thinking you had to sacrifice yourself for me. And if I stay, you'll spend the rest of your life rebuilding what you lost because of me. I don't care about the empire. Liar. I care about it, but I care about you more. The confession broke Isabella's heart all over again. Don't say that. Why? Because it makes leaving harder? Yes. Roman's laugh was bitter. Good. It should be hard. It should hurt. Because what we have, it's real, Isabella. It's messy and complicated and probably doomed, but it's real. And I'm not ready to give up on it. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. You're just too scared to make the one that keeps us together. The accusation stung because it was true. Isabella was terrified. Terrified of staying and watching everything burn. Terrified of leaving and never recovering from the loss. Terrified that no matter what she chose, someone she loved would pay the price. I'm scared, she whispered. Roman pulled her into his arms, held her tight. I know, me too, but I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. They stood there for a long time, holding each other, neither one willing to let go first. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, counting down the hours until morning, until she'd have to leave, until she'd have to walk away from the man she loved and pretend her heart wasn't breaking. Around 2 a.m, her door opened. Roman stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light. He didn't say anything, just looked at her with those storm-gray eyes, and Isabella felt her resolve crumble. I can't sleep either, he said quietly. Roman. He crossed the room, sat on the edge of her bed. I keep thinking about the first time I saw you, in my study. You were terrified, but you didn't let it show. You signed that contract with your hands shaking, but your signature was steady, and I thought, this girl's stronger than she knows. I'm not that strong. You are. You're the strongest person I've ever met, which is why I know you can survive this. We can survive this. If you'll just let us try. Isabella sat up, pulling the blanket around herself. What if trying isn't enough? Then at least we tried. At least we didn't give up without a fight. Your father is a bully who's used to getting his way, but I'm not my father, and I'm not going to let him dictate my life anymore. Not my business, not my choices, and definitely not who I love. Isabella's breath caught. You love me? Roman's smile was small and sad. I've been in love with you for weeks, maybe longer. I was just too much of a coward to admit it. You're not a coward. I've been running from feeling anything for 5 years. That's pretty cowardly. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But I'm done running. I'm standing my ground for you, for us, for the life we could have if you're brave enough to stay. Isabella felt tears sliding down her cheeks. What if I'm not brave enough? Then I'll be brave enough for both of us. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and desperate. Isabella kissed him back, pouring everything she couldn't say into the touch, all the love and fear and hope and heartbreak. When they pulled apart, Roman rested his forehead against hers. Stay, please, I'm begging you, stay. Isabella wanted to say yes, wanted to choose him and damn the consequences. But the weight of Vincent Sr.'s threats, the empire crumbling, the people who depended on Roman, it was too much. I can't, she whispered. I'm sorry. I can't. Roman's eyes closed. When he opened them again, they were wet. Then I guess this is goodbye. Roman, he stood, walked to the door, paused with his hand on the frame. For what it's worth, you were right. I would have chosen you over the empire, every single time, and I'll never regret that, even if you do. He left. And Isabella lay back down, pulled the blanket over her head, and cried herself to sleep for what felt like the 100th time. Morning came too fast. Isabella woke to find Vincent waiting in the lobby with papers for her to sign. Transfer documents, trust funds, ironclad agreements that promised her family would be taken care of if she left and never came back. She signed everything with numb fingers. Elena helped her carry her bags to the elevator. Neither of them spoke. What was there to say? Roman was nowhere to be seen. Isabella told herself it was better this way. Easier. But her heart ached knowing he couldn't even face her goodbye. The elevator doors were closing when she heard footsteps. Running. Roman appeared, shoving his arm between the doors to stop them. "Wait," he said, breathing hard. Isabella's heart stuttered. "Roman, don't make this harder than... I'm not here to stop you." He stepped into the elevator, let the doors close behind him. "But I'm not letting you leave without saying what I need to say." The elevator started moving down. 40 floors. Maybe 2 minutes before she walked out of his life forever. "I love you," Roman said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. "I love you more than I've ever loved anything. More than this empire. More than my own life. And if you walk out that door, I'm going to spend every day trying to find a way to bring you back." "Roman, please." "I'm not done." He stepped closer, cupped her face in his hands. "You think you're protecting me by leaving, but you're wrong. Because the only thing I need protection from is a life without you in it. So go if you have to. Take the money. Disappear. But know that I will never stop looking for you. Never stop fighting for us. Never stop loving you." The elevator hit the ground floor. The door started to open. Isabella looked into Roman's eyes and saw her entire future reflected there. A future of love and danger and uncertainty. A future worth fighting for. She dropped her bags. "I'm not getting in that car," she said. Roman's expression shifted from despair to hope. "What?" "I said I'm not leaving. Your father can go to hell. The empire can burn. I don't care, because you're right. We haven't even tried to fight yet." Roman pulled her into his arms, kissed her like she was air, and he'd been drowning. Isabella kissed him back, pouring every ounce of love and courage and terrified hope into it. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Roman said, "You're sure?" "No, but I'm staying anyway. My father's going to lose his mind. Let him." Roman laughed, a real, genuine laugh, and pulled her close again. "I love you. I love you too." They stood there in the elevator, holding each other, while Vincent waited outside with the car that would have taken Isabella away forever. Finally, Roman hit the button to take them back up. "We're going to war with my father," he said. "I know. It's going to be ugly. I know that too. You could still change your mind." Isabella looked at him. This broken, beautiful, dangerous man who'd fought his way through grief to love her, and smiled. "Not a chance." The elevator doors closed and they rose back toward the penthouse. Back toward the fight. Back toward a future neither of them was sure they'd survive. But they'd survive it together. And that was enough. Vincent Sr. was waiting in the penthouse when they came back up. He sat in Roman's chair like he owned it, drinking Roman's whiskey, looking completely unsurprised to see Isabella still carrying her bags. When the elevator doors opened and they stepped out together, he didn't even blink. "I had a feeling you'd change your mind," he said, setting down his glass. Roman always did have a talent for manipulation. "I didn't manipulate anyone," Roman said, his hand tight on Isabella's. "She made her own choice." A stupid choice. Vincent Sr. stood straightening his jacket. "But I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. Young love makes people do foolish things." "This isn't about love," Roman said. "This is about you not controlling my life anymore." Vincent Sr.'s expression hardened. "Everything I've done has been to protect this family, to protect you from making the same mistakes I did." "What mistakes? Building an empire? Or destroying everyone you cared about to keep it?" "Watch your tone, boy." "I'm not a boy. I'm 34 years old, and I've been running this organization for 6 years, successfully, without your help, without your interference, and I'm done pretending I need your approval." Vincent Sr.'s eyes narrowed. "You think you can stand against me?" "I know I can." "Then you're more arrogant than I thought." Vincent Sr. moved toward them, his presence filling the room with barely controlled violence. "Let me explain something to you, Roman. This empire exists because I built it from nothing. Every alliance, every territory, every dollar, it's mine. and I can take it all back whenever I choose. Try it, Roman said quietly. Call the families. Tell them you want control back. See how many of them agree to follow a man who retired 6 years ago and spent that time hiding upstate because the pressure got too heavy. Vincent Sr.'s face went dark. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? You left because you couldn't handle it anymore. The violence, the constant threats, the weight of keeping everyone in line. It broke you. Same way it almost broke me. But the difference is, I found something worth staying human for. Roman pulled Isabella closer. You never did. You just became the monster the job required. For a long moment, Vincent Sr. just stared at his son. Then he laughed, a cold, bitter sound. You think she's going to save you? Make you better? I thought the same thing about your mother. Look how that turned out. Isabella felt Roman tense beside her. Don't bring her into this. Why not? She's relevant. Your mother was soft, kind. Everything I wasn't, and she couldn't survive being married to what I'd become. So she left. Took you with her for a while until I convinced her that you'd be better off with me. Better off learning to be strong instead of weak. She didn't leave because she was weak, Roman said, his voice shaking. She left because you were poison, and then you poisoned me against her. Made me think caring about anything was a character flaw. It is. Caring gets you killed in this business. No, being alone gets you killed. Because when you don't care about anything, you don't have anything worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth staying alive for. Roman's hand found Isabella's, squeezed. Isabella's not making me weak. She's making me remember why any of this matters. Vincent Sr. studied them both, his expression unreadable. You really believe that? I know it. Then you're lost. Vincent Sr. picked up his glass, finished his whiskey. I gave you a chance to do this the easy way, to send her away quietly and maintain your position. But you chose her over the Empire. So now I'll do what I should have done from the beginning. I'm calling a meeting of the families, formal challenge, and when I prove you're unfit to lead, I'll take back what's mine. When's the meeting? Roman asked. 3 days. Neutral ground. The Belmore estate. Every major family will be there. Vincent Sr. moved toward the elevator. Bring your wife if you want. Let them all see what's compromised you. It'll make my case easier. He left without another word. The moment the elevator doors closed, Roman pulled Isabella into his arms. He was shaking. We just declared war on your father, Isabella said quietly. I know. He's going to try to destroy you. I know that too. Are you sure about Sis? It's not too late. I could still... Roman pulled back, looked at her with fierce intensity. Don't even think about leaving again. We're in this together now, no matter what happens. Isabella nodded, trying to ignore the fear clawing at her chest. What do? We prepare, and we hope that 6 years of building relationships counts for more than my father's threats. The next 3 days were chaos. Roman called in every favor he had, reached out to allies, made promises, negotiated. He barely slept, barely ate. Isabella watched him transform back into the cold, calculating mafia boss she'd first met, except now she could see the cracks. The moments where the mask slipped and she caught glimpses of the man underneath, the one who was terrified of losing everything but trying desperately not to show it. She helped where she could, made phone calls, played the role of supportive wife to perfection, smiled at the right moments, said the right things, became exactly what Roman needed her to be. Elena was a constant presence, managing logistics, keeping the household running, making sure Isabella didn't fall apart under the pressure. You're stronger than you look, Elena told her one afternoon while Roman was on yet another call. I don't feel strong. None of us do. But you're still standing. That's what matters. The night before the meeting, Roman found Isabella in the library. She'd been reading the same page for 20 minutes, unable to concentrate. Can't sleep? He asked. Not really. He sat down beside her, took the book from her hands, set it aside. I need to tell you something. Isabella's stomach dropped. What? Tomorrow, when we go to that meeting, there's a chance things could go badly. My father might have more support than I think. People I thought were allies might turn on me. And if that happens... He trailed off, jaw tight. If that happens, I need you to promise me something. Roman, promise me that if things go wrong, you'll leave. Take Vincent and get somewhere safe. Use the money I've set aside for you. Start over. Don't look back. I'm not leaving you. Isabella, no. I already tried that once, remember? I got all the way to the elevator and I couldn't do it. What makes you think I could do it tomorrow? Because tomorrow the stakes are higher. If my father wins, he won't just take the empire. He'll eliminate threats. And you're a threat. Isabella's chest tightened. You think he'd kill me? I think he'd do whatever it takes to erase evidence that I was ever compromised. And you're that evidence. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they made her angry. Then we make sure he doesn't win. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You walk into that meeting, you make your case, and you remind everyone why they followed you for 6 years. You're smarter than your father, more strategic, less brutal, but more effective. And you have something he never had. What's that? People who actually care about you, not people who follow out of fear. People who believe in what you're building. Isabella took his hand. And you have me, standing beside you, showing everyone that you're not compromised. You're committed to your people, to your vision, to a future that's better than the past. Roman pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. When did you get so brave? When I fell in love with a man who needed someone to believe in him. They held each other in the quiet library, bracing for the storm they knew was coming. The Belmore estate was 3 hours upstate. Vincent drove them in silence. Isabella sat beside Roman in the back, their hands linked, both of them staring out the window at the passing landscape. You don't have to come inside, Roman said quietly. You could wait in the car. Stay safe. We've been over this. I'm coming. Isabella, no. You need me there, to show a united front, to prove that what we have isn't a weakness. She squeezed his hand. I'm not hiding while you fight for us. Roman looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. Pride, love, fear, all of it tangled together. You know I love you, right? I know. And if anything happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. But if it does, I need you to know that these past few months have been the best of my life. You changed everything. Made me remember what it feels like to be human instead of just surviving. Isabella's vision blurred. Stop talking like this is goodbye. I'm just saying, I know what you're saying, and I love you too. But we're both walking out of that meeting alive. Together. So save the declarations for later. Roman smiled, small, real, genuine. Yes, ma'am. The Belmore estate was exactly what Isabella expected. Old money, old power. The kind of place where empires were built and destroyed over dinner and expensive wine. Cars lined the driveway. Black. Expensive. All of them. The families were already here. Roman took a breath, straightened his jacket, became the man the world expected him to be. Cold, controlled, dangerous. But before they got out of the car, he turned to Isabella one more time. Whatever happens in there, don't let them see you scared. I won't. And stay close to me, always. I will. They walked into the lion's den together. The meeting room was huge, long table, 20 chairs, men in expensive suits sitting in judgment. Isabella recognized a few faces from the charity gala. Others were new. All of them looked at her with varying degrees of curiosity, suspicion, and contempt. Vincent Sr. sat at the head of the table, looking like he'd already won. Roman walked to the opposite end, Isabella beside him. He didn't sit, just stood there, meeting every eye in the room with steady confidence. Gentlemen, Roman said, I understand my father has called this meeting to challenge my leadership, so let's get to it. Vincent Sr. smiled. Always so direct. That used to be a strength. Now it's just impatience. He stood, addressed the room. 6 years ago, I stepped down and handed control of our organization to my son. I did this believing he was ready, that he understood what it takes to maintain our position, our power, our respect. And I've maintained all of that, Roman interrupted. Revenue is up 40%. Territories are stable. Law enforcement hasn't touched us in 3 years. By every metric that matters, the organization is stronger than it's ever been. Financially, yes. But strength isn't just about money. Vincent Sr.'s eyes swept the room. It's about respect, fear, the understanding that we don't compromise, we don't show weakness, and we certainly don't let personal attachments interfere with business decisions. You mean my marriage? I mean your obvious infatuation with a woman who has no place in this world. Vincent Sr. gestured to Isabella dismissively. She's a liability, evidence of compromised judgment, proof that you've gone soft. Roman's jaw tightened. Isabella is my wife. Legally, publicly, she represents stability, legitimacy, exactly what you told me I needed. I told you to acquire a wife for appearances, not to fall in love with her. There's a difference. Murmurs rippled through the room. Isabella felt every eye on her, assessing, judging. My personal feelings don't affect my ability to lead, Roman said. Don't they? Vincent Sr. moved around the table. Tell me, son, if forced to choose between the organization and that girl, which would you pick? It was a trap. Isabella could see it. Roman could see it. Everyone in the room could see it. If he chose the organization, he looked heartless. If he chose Isabella, he looked weak. Roman didn't hesitate. I'd choose both. Because the choice you're presenting is a false one. Leadership doesn't mean sacrificing everything human about yourself. It means being strategic about what matters and what doesn't. And Isabella matters. To me. Which makes her strength, not weakness. Romantic, naive, and completely unacceptable. Vincent Sr. turned to the room. How many of you would trust a leader who admits his wife matters more than business? Silence. Then one man spoke. Older, gray-haired, someone Isabella didn't recognize. I would. Vincent Sr. spun. Excuse me? I said I would trust him, because a man who has something to protect fights harder than a man who has nothing to lose. Roman's been good for business, good for stability, and his marriage doesn't change that. Another voice joined in. I agree. The numbers speak for themselves. Under Roman's leadership, we've all prospered. Why change that? Because leadership requires sacrifice. Vincent Sr.'s voice rose. It requires putting the organization above everything else. Like you did? Roman's voice cut through the room. Is that why you retired? Why you disappeared upstate and let me handle everything? Because you were so committed to the organization? Vincent Sr.'s face went dark. I retired because you broke. The pressure, the violence, the constant threats. It destroyed you. Same way it destroyed Mom. Same way it almost destroyed me. But the difference is, I'm not running from it. I'm facing it, with someone by my side who makes me stronger, not weaker. She's a distraction. She's my reason, Roman's voice echoed through the room. Every decision I make, every risk I take, every fight I choose, it's because I have something worth protecting, worth building for, worth staying human for. You never understood that, and that's why you couldn't sustain this. But I can, because I'm not alone anymore. The room fell silent. Vincent Sr. stared at his son, and for the first time Isabella saw something crack in his expression. Not surrender, but recognition. Like he was seeing Roman clearly for the first time in years. You really believe that, Vincent Sr. said quietly. I know it. Vincent Sr. looked at Isabella, really looked at her. You love him? Isabella's heart pounded. Yes. Enough to die for him? If it comes to that, it might. This life, it's unforgiving, brutal. It will take everything from you and demand more. Are you prepared for that? Isabella met his eyes without flinching. I'm prepared to stand beside him, whatever comes. For a long moment, Vincent Sr. just stared at her. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. Not warmth, not approval, but something close to respect. He turned back to the room. I called this meeting because I believed my son had been compromised, that his judgment was clouded by sentiment. But looking at him now, he paused. I see a man who's found something worth fighting for. And maybe that's not weakness. Maybe that's the kind of strength I never had. Shock rippled through Isabella. Was he backing down? However, Vincent Sr. continued, strength requires proof. So here's my proposal. Roman stays in control. For now. But if anything jeopardizes this organization because of his attachment to her, leadership reverts to me, permanently. No second chances. Roman's jaw tightened. And who decides what constitutes jeopardy? This council. Majority vote. It wasn't perfect. It was barely acceptable. But it was better than all-out war. Roman looked at Isabella. She nodded slightly. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Fine, Roman said. We have a deal. Vincent Sr. extended his hand. Roman shook it. The gesture was stiff, formal, devoid of any real warmth, but it was done. The meeting dissolved after that. Men filed out, some stopping to congratulate Roman, others avoiding eye contact. Isabella stayed close to his side, playing the role perfectly. When they were finally alone, Roman pulled her into an empty hallway and kissed her hard. We did it, he said against her lips. You did it. No, we did it. Together. Isabella pulled back, looked at him. Your father didn't really back down. He just postponed the fight. I know, but it buys us time to strengthen alliances, prove that we can do this. Roman cupped her face. And it keeps you safe. For now. For now isn't forever. Nothing is, but I'll take what I can get. They drove home in silence, exhausted, relieved, still processing what had just happened. Back at the penthouse, Roman poured them both drinks. They sat together on the couch, Isabella curled against his side, both of them staring at the city lights outside. What happens now? Isabella asked. Now we live our lives. Build something real. Prove that what we have isn't a liability. And your father? We'll be watching, waiting for us to fail, so we don't give him the satisfaction. Isabella smiled despite the weight of it all. No pressure. None at all. Roman kissed the top of her head, and they sat there in the quiet, two people who'd fought their way through hell to find each other. The next few months were different. Roman was still busy, still dangerous, still carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders. But now, when he came home to Isabella. Really came home. Not just physically present, but actually there. Present, engaged, building a life instead of just surviving one. They started having real conversations over breakfast, planning things beyond the next crisis. Talking about the future like it was something they could actually count on. Isabella found her own rhythm. She started working with one of Roman's legitimate businesses, a real estate development company that built affordable housing. It wasn't charity work. It was real, meaningful labor that made a difference. And it gave her purpose beyond just being Roman's wife. Marcus visited, saw the penthouse, met Roman, and after an awkward first hour, actually started to relax. He pulled Isabella aside at one point and said, "You look happy, really happy. I wasn't sure I'd ever see that." "I am happy," Isabella said, and she meant it. Her mother took longer to come around, but eventually, after weeks of phone calls and one very tense dinner, she sat across from Roman and said, "You hurt my daughter, and I'll find a way to make you regret it." Roman had smiled, genuine and real, and said, "I believe you, and I'll deserve it." That had been enough. Vincent Sr. kept his distance, watched from afar, occasionally sent messages through intermediaries, testing, probing, looking for weaknesses. But Roman held firm, made smart decisions, kept the organization stable and profitable. And slowly, grudgingly, even Vincent Sr. had to admit his son was succeeding. One evening, about 6 months after the meeting at the Belmore estate, Roman came home early. He found Isabella in the library reading. "Hey," she said, looking up. "You're home before midnight. Did something break?" "No, I just wanted to see you." Isabella smiled. "That's new." Getting used to it. Roman sat down beside her, took her hand. "I have something for you. It's not my birthday." "I know, but I saw this and thought of you." He pulled out a small box, jewelry-sized. Isabella opened it and found a key. "A key?" she asked. "To a house. In Brooklyn, near where you grew up." Roman's voice was soft. "I know the penthouse feels like a cage sometimes, and I know you miss being close to your family. So I bought us a place, somewhere normal, where we can just be us. No empire, no pressure, just home." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "Roman, I want to build a life with you, a real one, not just this." He gestured to the penthouse. "I want Sunday dinners with your family, neighbors who borrow sugar, a place where we can be normal people instead of just surviving the roles we play." "You'd do that? Leave all this?" "Not permanently. I still have responsibilities. But we can have both. The empire and the life. if we're smart about it, if we fight for it. Isabella kissed him, tasting salt and love and hope. I love you. I love you too. More than I thought I could love anything. That weekend, they went to see the house. It was perfect. Not too big, not too fancy. Just a brownstone in a quiet neighborhood with a yard and neighbors and the kind of normal Isabella thought she'd lost forever. They moved in a month later, kept the penthouse for work, but made the brownstone their home. And slowly, piece by piece, they built the life they'd both been too afraid to hope for. Marcus stayed with them sometimes when he needed space from their mom. He and Roman developed an unlikely friendship built on sports arguments and terrible action movies. Isabella's mother came for dinner every Sunday. She still didn't fully trust Roman, but she loved her daughter enough to try. And over time, she saw what Isabella saw. A man who'd been broken and was learning how to be whole again. Elena stayed on as household manager, splitting time between the penthouse and the brownstone, becoming less employee and more family. And Roman changed in ways Isabella couldn't have predicted. He smiled more, laughed, let his guard down enough to be vulnerable. He still carried the weight of his empire, still made hard choices, still dealt with violence and danger. But now he had something to come home to that reminded him why it mattered. 2 years after their wedding, on a quiet Tuesday evening, Roman found Isabella in their kitchen making dinner. Something simple. Pasta and wine. Nothing fancy. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, kissed her neck. I have a question for you. Shoot. Marry me. Isabella laughed. We're already married. I know, but that was a business transaction. A contract. I want to do it again, for real this time. Just us, your family, a few friends. Something that's actually about love instead of obligation. Isabella turned in his arms, looked up at him. You want to marry me again? I want to marry you properly, with vows we actually mean, in front of people who matter. I want to look you in the eye and promise you forever without any fine print or escape clauses. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. Yes. Yeah? Yeah, let's do it. Let's get married for real. They did it a month later. Small ceremony, City Hall, just family and a handful of close friends. No contracts, no obligations. Just two people who'd fought their way through hell choosing to love each other anyway. When the officiant asked if they took each other, Roman said, Absolutely, Isabella said, without question. And when they kissed, it wasn't performance, it wasn't strategy, it was just love. Messy and complicated and real. At the reception, a backyard party at the brownstone, Marcus gave a toast that made everyone cry. Elena got drunk and told embarrassing stories. Isabella's mother hugged Roman and whispered, Thank you for making her happy. And Roman, the man who'd spent years believing he couldn't love anyone without destroying them, looked around at the life they'd built and realized something profound. Love wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing he'd ever done. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and they were alone in their bedroom, Isabella asked, Do you ever regret it, choosing me over the easy path? Roman pulled her close. Never. Not for a single second. Your father still thinks you're compromised. My father's wrong. I'm not compromised. I'm committed. To you. To us. To building something that matters more than power or fear or control. What about the Empire? The Empire's fine, better than fine. Turns out having something to fight for makes you fight smarter. Roman smiled. Besides, I found something better than an empire. What's that? A home. A real one. With you. Isabella kissed him, and they held each other in the quiet darkness. Two people who'd been bought and sold and broken and rebuilt. Who'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself love someone despite all the reasons not to. 5 years later, Isabella stood in the nursery of their brownstone holding their daughter, Sophia. Named after no one in particular, just a name they both loved. Roman came home from the legitimate investment firm he now ran, having slowly transitioned out of the darker parts of his father's empire, and found them there. How was work? Isabella asked. Boring, legal, exactly the way I like it. He kissed his daughter's head, then Isabella's lips. How was your day? Also boring, also perfect. They stood there, a family, in a home they'd built together. The empire still existed. Vincent Sr. had eventually retired for real, though he called occasionally to critique Roman's choices. The family still operated in the shadows, but Roman had found a way to step back without stepping away completely, to maintain influence without sacrificing his humanity. It wasn't perfect. Some days were harder than others. Old enemies occasionally surfaced. Threats still came. But they faced them together, and that made all the difference. That night, after Sophia was asleep, Roman and Isabella sat on their porch, watching the neighborhood settle into evening. "Do you ever think about how we started?" Isabella asked. "Every day? Regret any of it? The contract? The arrangement? The way your father sold you to save himself?" Roman took her hand. "I regret all of that, but I don't regret where it led us." "Me neither. You changed my life, Isabella. Made me remember I was human. Gave me something worth being human for. You changed mine too. Showed me I was stronger than I thought, braver than I believed." They sat in comfortable silence. Two people who'd learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, fighting for each other, choosing each other every single day despite all the reasons not to. Roman had been sold a contract. Isabella had been bought like property. But what they built together was real, messy, complicated, sometimes painful, always worth it. Because in the end, the most dangerous thing Roman DeLuca ever did wasn't building an empire or facing down his father or surviving in a world built on violence. The most dangerous thing he ever did was let himself love someone, let himself be loved in return, let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he deserved something good. And Isabella, the girl who'd been traded away to save her family, who'd signed a contract out of desperation, who'd survived a wedding night that felt like a funeral, she learned that strength wasn't about not being afraid. It was about being terrified and choosing to stay anyway. They weren't perfect. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. But it was theirs, built on honesty and sacrifice, and the stubborn belief that love could survive anything if you fought hard enough for it. And in a world where power and control were currency, where violence solved problems and fear kept order, two people found something more valuable than all of it. They found each other. And that was enough. That was everything.